My fiancé texted, "Still love you, but I need to get closure with my ex before marriage." I replied, "Take your time." Then I called her parents and returned the ring. She found out when they asked her why she wasn't engaged anymore. I'm sitting here in my apartment, and it's quiet. For the first time in 3 years, it is completely, peacefully quiet. 3 weeks ago, this place was a staging ground for a wedding. Now, it's just my apartment again. It's better this way. A lot of you asked for the whole story after my first post, so here it is from the beginning. It all started on a Thursday morning. My fiancée, Chloe, and I were supposed to be doing a final walkthrough of our wedding venue that afternoon. We were 3 weeks out from the big day. Everything was paid for, non-refundable deposits everywhere. Her dress was ready, my suit was tailored, invitations had been sent, and RSVPs were in. We were, for all intents and purposes, locked in. I was in the middle of a conference call when my phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Chloe. I figured it was about the venue, maybe a reminder about the time. I was wrong. The text read, "Hey, I know this is bad timing, but I can't stop thinking about Mark. I feel like I need to see him and get real closure before we get married. It wouldn't be fair to you to walk down the aisle with any doubts. I still love you, but I need to do this for myself. I'm going to see him this weekend. Don't worry." I read it once, then a second time, then a third. It felt like the words were rearranging themselves on the screen. Closure. With her ex-boyfriend, Mark. The guy she dated for 5 years before me, the one she always described as intense and complicated. The guy whose name would occasionally pop up, leaving a weird tension in the room. 3 weeks before our wedding, she needed to go see him for closure. Something inside me didn't break. It didn't even crack. It just went cold. It was the kind of clarity you get when you're driving in heavy fog and it suddenly vanishes, revealing you're 2 feet from the edge of a cliff. All the little things from the past few months suddenly snapped into focus. Her being distant. The late-night texting she claimed was with her bridesmaids. The vague answers about her plans. I ended my conference call. I sat there for maybe 5 minutes, just staring at the wall. I thought about the life we were supposed to build. I thought about the promises we'd made. And then I thought about that text message. It wasn't a request for permission. It was a notification. She had already decided. She was telling me, not asking me. She was putting her unresolved feelings for another man ahead of our commitment 3 weeks before we were supposed to make it legally binding. And in that moment, I realized I was not going to be the guy who waits at home, worrying, while his fiancée goes on a soul-searching trip with her ex. I was not going to be Plan B. I was not going to be a doormat. I picked up my phone. My hands were perfectly steady. I typed my reply to her. "Take your time." Then I put my phone on silent, opened my laptop, and got to work. The wedding wasn't just being postponed, it was being dismantled, effective immediately. My first call was not to my friends. It was not to my family. It was to Chloe's parents. Her father, David, answered. He's a decent guy, a bit formal, but he always seemed to like me. "David, it's Alex," I said, keeping my voice calm and even. "I'm sorry to bother you at work, but something serious has come up regarding the wedding." He immediately sounded concerned, asking if Chloe was okay. "She's fine," I said. "But she has just informed me that she is going to spend this weekend with her ex-boyfriend, Mark, to get closure before our wedding. She feels this is something she needs to do." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing. "She what?" "She's gonna see Mark. She said she can't marry me with doubts. I'm not sure what will happen after her trip, but I cannot in good conscience move forward with a wedding under these circumstances. As of this moment, the engagement is off." More silence. I could hear his wife, Sarah, in the background asking what was wrong. I heard him mutter to her, "Chloe went to see Mark." Then, back to me, his voice was different, colder. "I see. Thank you for letting us know, Alex. I don't know what to say." "There's nothing you need to say," I told him. "I just felt you and Sarah had a right to know immediately. I have a couple of rings here I'd like to return to you as well." This is probably a good time to explain the rings. When we got engaged, Chloe was very insistent on the idea of us both having engagement rings. She called it a modern symbol of our equal commitment. She had a custom one made for me, a simple platinum band. It was her parents' gift to me. a welcome to the family gesture. I wasn't thrilled with the idea, as it's not really a tradition for men here, but it seemed to make her happy, so I went with it. Now that equal commitment felt like a joke. I can drop them off this evening, I continued. David just sounded defeated. Yes, that's fine. I'll be home after 6. The next series of calls were to the vendors. I started with the venue. I explained that the wedding was canceled. The woman on the phone was sympathetic but firm. The final payment made 2 weeks prior was non-refundable. That was a painful $20,000 pill to swallow. Same story with the caterer, the photographer, the band. Each call was a nail in the coffin of the $60,000 wedding we had planned. My parents had contributed a generous amount, but the bulk of it was my own savings. Money I had worked hard for, gone. I sent a mass email to everyone on our guest list with the subject line, "Wedding cancellation." The body was short and to the point. Due to unforeseen circumstances, the wedding of Chloe and Alex scheduled for date has been canceled. We apologize for any inconvenience this may cause. I didn't offer any more explanation. Let the rumors fly. The truth was messier than any rumor they could invent. I spent the rest of the afternoon packing. Chloe had moved into my apartment about a year ago. She didn't have much furniture, but her clothes, shoes, and personal items had a way of expanding to fill every available space. I was methodical. I bought boxes from the store down the street. I packed every item of hers carefully. Her designer bags, her endless collection of makeup, the books she'd read halfway and left on the nightstand. I labeled each box neatly. Chloe, clothes. Chloe, bathroom. Chloe, books. By the time I was done, there was a neat stack of 22 boxes in the spare bedroom. The apartment already felt bigger. It felt like mine again. At 6:30, I drove to her parents' house. I had the 2 small ring boxes in my jacket pocket. Sarah, her mom, answered the door. Her eyes were red, and she looked like she'd been crying. David was standing behind her, looking grim. They invited me in, but I stayed on the doorstep. "I won't stay long," I said. "I just wanted to return these." I handed David the box with my ring. Then I handed him the box with the diamond ring I had spent 3 months of my salary on. The one Chloe had picked out herself. He took them without a word. Sarah finally spoke, her voice trembling. "We don't understand, Alex. Why would she do this now?" "That's a question you'll have to ask her," I said. "All I know is that she made a choice, and her choice was not me. I'm just accepting that." I wished them well and walked back to my car. As I drove away, I saw them standing in the doorway. 2 confused and heartbroken people, holding the remnants of a future their daughter had just thrown away. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt a profound sense of emptiness. The cold, logical part of my brain had executed the plan perfectly. The human part was just starting to process the wreckage. When I got home, I ordered a pizza and opened my laptop. It was time to change some passwords. Update 1. It's been a week since my last post. A lot has happened. Thank you for all the comments and messages. It's strange to get support from strangers on the internet, but it honestly helped me feel less like I was going crazy. So, where we left off, I had canceled the wedding, informed Chloe's parents, and packed up her life into 22 boxes. All of this was done in the 12 hours after she sent me that text. She was, at this point, completely unaware of the hurricane she was about to walk into. She was off on her closure trip with Mark. The silence for the next 3 days was absolute. She didn't text. I didn't text. I just went about the business of untangling our lives. I called the travel agent and canceled our honeymoon to Greece. Lost another $5,000 on that. I went through all our shared accounts and subscriptions, methodically removing her name, changing passwords. I contacted the landlord and had her name officially removed from the lease agreement. She wasn't a legal tenant, just listed as an occupant, so it was a simple process. On Sunday evening, my phone finally buzzed with a message from a number I didn't recognize. It was Chloe's best friend and maid of honor, Jessica. "Alex, what is going on? Chloe's parents are freaking out and not making any sense. They said you called off the wedding? Is this some kind of joke?" I replied simply, "No joke. The wedding is off. You should probably ask Chloe why." Jessica's response came instantly. "She's not answering her phone. We're all worried. What did you do?" The sheer audacity of that question, "What did you do?" was almost funny. They immediately assumed I was the problem. I didn't bother to reply. The main event happened on Monday morning. I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a message appeared. It was Chloe, and she sounded hysterical. "Alex, call me right now. My mom just called me, screaming. She said you gave my ring back? What is going on? Why would you do that without talking to me? This is insane. Call me." She must have just finished her weekend of closure and was hit with the news from her mother. Not from me. I was, after all, respecting her wishes. Then the texts started pouring in, a flood of them. "Why are you doing this? I told you I still loved you. My parents are acting like I committed a crime. You twisted everything. You had no right to cancel everything without even talking to me. Jessica told me you emailed the entire guest list. How could you humiliate me like that?" I read them all, one by one, feeling nothing but a distant sense of confirmation. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what she had done. It was all about how my actions had affected her. The victim narrative was already being spun, and she was casting herself in the starring role. I let her spiral for a few hours. Then I sent my only reply. "You said you needed to get closure before you could marry me. I accept that. The engagement is over. Your belongings are packed in the spare room. Please let me know when you would like to arrange for them to be picked up. I would prefer if you had your father or a moving service handle it." The response was immediate and furious. She called me a monster, a coward, a psycho. She said I had taken her text the wrong way, that I was overreacting, that she had been planning to come home and talk everything through. She demanded to be let into the apartment to get her things. I replied, "The locks have been changed. Please arrange a time for pickup." This apparently was the final straw. Her messages devolved into pure rage. That's when her friends got involved. I started getting texts from Jessica and another bridesmaid, Lauren. They were a tag team of indignation. "You are being so controlling and manipulative," Jessica wrote. "She made one little mistake because she was stressed about the wedding and you destroy her life?" Lauren added her 2 cents. "Real men fight for their relationships. They don't just throw them away like trash. Chloe deserves better." A little mistake. That's what they were calling it. A planned trip to see an ex-boyfriend, a trip she lied about by omission for weeks, was a little mistake. I was starting to see the echo chamber she lived in. A world where her actions had no consequences and her feelings were the only thing that mattered. I blocked their numbers, all of them. My phone went quiet again. The next day, I got an email from her father, David. It was short and formal. He said he would come on Saturday with a moving truck to collect Chloe's things. He asked if Chloe could be present to make sure nothing was missed. I agreed, on the condition that she would not be allowed to wander through the apartment. She could stand in the entryway and direct her father. He agreed. The rest of the week was spent in a weird limbo. I went to work, came home to a half-empty apartment, and tried to process the fact that my life had completely changed in the span of a few days. The anger was starting to be replaced by a deep, hollow sadness. I had been planning a future with this person. I had believed in the life we were building, and it had all been a lie. I found out later from a mutual friend who felt guilty for not saying anything sooner that Chloe had been in contact with Mark for months. It wasn't a sudden crisis of doubt. It was a prolonged emotional affair that she had been hiding. The closure trip was supposed to be her final test. She was going to see if the fantasy of getting back with Mark was better than the reality of marrying me. She wanted to have her cake and eat it too. She just never imagined that while she was gone, I would throw the whole cake in the trash. Saturday came. The moving truck pulled up right on time. David and his brother came to the door. Chloe was standing behind them on the sidewalk. She wouldn't look at me. Her face was puffy, and she was wearing sunglasses even though it was overcast. She looked smaller than I remembered. I propped the door open and stood in the hallway. "The boxes are in the spare room," I told David. 22 of them. Everything is packed. For the next hour, they carried boxes out of my apartment. Chloe stood in the entryway, pointing and directing. Her voice a strained whisper. She tried to make a few comments to me. "You didn't have to do this, Alex. We could have talked. This is cruel." I didn't respond. I just stood there, arms crossed, watching them erase the last traces of her from my home. When the last box was loaded, David came back to the door. He looked exhausted. "That's everything," he said. He hesitated, then looked me in the eye. "For what it's worth, son, I'm sorry." I just nodded. Chloe walked up behind him. She had taken her sunglasses off. Her eyes were full of a strange mix of anger and desperation. "Are you happy now?" she asked, her voice cracking. "You got what you wanted. You ruined everything." I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since this all began. I didn't see the woman I had planned to marry. I saw a stranger. "I didn't ruin anything, Chloe," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "I just cleaned up the mess you made." Then I closed the door. Update 2. It has now been a full month since what my friends have started calling the Great Cancellation. The dust is settling, but the fallout has been interesting. The quiet in my apartment is no longer eerie. It's peaceful. I'm rediscovering my own space, my own routines. It's amazing how much of yourself you can lose in a relationship without even realizing it. After the movers left with Chloe's 22 boxes of shame, I expected the drama to die down. I was wrong. The next phase was the smear campaign. Chloe, with the help of her loyal lieutenants, Jessica and Lauren, launched a full-scale assault on my character. It started on social media. Vague posts about surviving emotional abuse and escaping a toxic controlling relationship. They never used my name, but the context was clear. Mutual friends started looking at me sideways. I got a few messages asking for my side of the story. At first, I ignored it. I'm not a fan of airing dirty laundry in public, but it escalated. I heard through the grapevine that Chloe was telling people I had a temper, that I was financially controlling, and that I had canceled the wedding in a fit of rage over a minor disagreement. She was painting herself as the victim who had been callously thrown out on the street. The closure trip with Mark was conveniently omitted from her version of events. The tipping point came when I got a call from my mother. She was distraught. One of her friends had heard from a friend of Sarah's, Chloe's mom, that I had been horrible to Chloe and that the breakup was all my fault. The lies were starting to affect my family, and that was a line I wouldn't let them cross. I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore, but I wasn't going to engage in a messy social media war. That's what she wanted. She wanted me to look angry and unhinged, to prove her narrative right. My revenge, I decided, would be quiet, precise, and based on one thing she couldn't argue with: her own words. I took a screenshot of her original text message, the one where she announced her trip to see Mark for closure. I didn't post it publicly. That wasn't my style. Instead, I sent it to 3 key people. First, I sent it to Jessica's husband, a guy I was friendly with. I attached a simple message. "Hey man, I know you're hearing a lot of stuff right now. This is the minor disagreement that started everything. Just wanted you to have the facts." Second, I sent it to the best man from my side, who was friends with several guys in Chloe's extended circle. My message was similar, just so you have the real story when people ask. Third, and this was the masterstroke, I sent it to Sarah, Chloe's mother. My message to her was different. "Sarah, I have stayed silent while Chloe tells everyone a version of events that is not true. I will not engage in public drama, but I think you, as her mother, deserve to know the exact words that ended our engagement." This was her choice. My only choice was how to react to it. The effect was immediate and devastating. Jessica's husband, a no-nonsense type, was apparently furious that his wife was involved in spreading lies. I heard he had a very serious conversation with her about loyalty and honesty. Jessica went completely silent after that. No more texts, no more social media posts. The rumor mill among our mutual friends ground to a halt and then started turning in the other direction. The story of the text message spread like wildfire. Suddenly, everyone understood. My actions, the canceled wedding, the packed boxes, the changed locks, made perfect sense in this new context. I wasn't a villain. I was a guy who refused to be played for a fool. But the most significant fallout came from Chloe's own family. Sarah, faced with the undeniable proof of her daughter's betrayal, in her own words, could no longer maintain the victim narrative. The dynamic in their house apparently shifted overnight. It was no longer about comforting poor, heartbroken Chloe. It became about confronting Chloe's terrible decision-making. And what about Mark? The catalyst for this whole disaster? I found out what happened there from a friend of a friend. Chloe's grand romantic reunion didn't go as planned. Mark was apparently flattered that she came to see him and they had a great weekend reconnecting. But when she showed up on his doorstep a week later with 22 boxes, a canceled wedding, and a whole lot of drama, he panicked. He wasn't looking to pick up the pieces of her life. He was married, yes. You read that right? Mark was married. It was something Chloe had conveniently forgotten to mention. He had apparently told her it was a mistake, and they were basically separated, a classic line that she chose to believe. His wife, however, did not see it that way. When she found out Chloe was planning to move into their guest room for a little while, she gave him an ultimatum. Chloe goes, or I go. He chose his wife. So, Chloe's escape plan, her grand test of fate, had imploded. She had torched her engagement for a man who was never actually available. She was left with nothing. No fiancé, no backup boyfriend, no apartment. She was 31 years old, living in her childhood bedroom, with her parents looking at her with a mixture of pity and profound disappointment. The financial reality also began to set in. Chloe had quit her job 2 months before the wedding, a mutual decision we made so she could focus on the final preparations, and then we would figure out her next career move after the honeymoon. She had no income. She had been living entirely off my support. Now, that was gone. She had a car payment and credit card bills that she had no way to pay. The desperate texts started again, this time to my parents. Apologies, regrets, pleas for them to talk to me. My mom called me, her voice sad. She seems truly broken, Alex. She's not broken, Mom, I told her. She's just broke. There's a difference. I had one final piece of business to take care of. The $60,000 we lost on the wedding. My parents and I had agreed to split the loss, but it still stung. Then I had an idea. I called a lawyer and asked a simple question. We had a joint savings account that we had both contributed to for wedding expenses. After I paid the final vendor deposits, there was still about $10,000 left in it, money that was now legally half mine. However, Chloe, in the days between her return and getting her boxes, had drained the account completely. My lawyer sent a letter to her parents' address. It was a formal demand for the return of my $5,000 from the joint account, citing her withdrawal as an act of bad faith conversion of shared assets post-separation. It also included an itemized list of all the non-refundable wedding expenses, making it clear that while I wasn't legally pursuing her for half of the $60,000, the moral debt was hers to carry. The check for $5,000 arrived a week later, sent by her father. There was no note. It was the last communication I ever received from their family. It wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. It was the final, quiet confirmation that they knew she was in the wrong. The battle was over. Final update. It's been 6 months now. The seasons have changed. The raw anger has faded, replaced by a quiet sense of peace I haven't felt in years. I'm writing this final update not because there's more drama, but because there isn't. And that, I've learned, is the most satisfying revenge of all. Life moves on. My apartment is fully my own now. I repainted the living room, bought a new couch that is much more comfortable than the one Chloe picked out, and filled the empty closet space with my own things. I've started hobbies I let slide during my relationship, hiking on weekends, joining a weekly trivia team with some old friends. I'm rediscovering the person I was before I became half of a we. The aftermath for Chloe has been, from what I've heard, difficult. The news about Mark being married spread through our old social circle and solidified her reputation as someone who makes disastrously selfish choices. Her friends, Jessica and Lauren, eventually distanced themselves. Supporting the victim is one thing. Being associated with a homewrecker who blew up her own life is another. Their loyalty, it turned out, was as shallow as the narrative they were pushing. Chloe had to get a job, something she hadn't needed to worry about for a while. She's working in retail, a significant step down from the career she had before she quit. She's still living with her parents. There's a certain poetic justice in that. She wanted to escape the perceived boredom of a stable life with me, and instead, she ended up in a state of arrested development, back in her teenage bedroom. Her father, David, and I ran into each other at a hardware store a couple of months ago. It was awkward for a moment, and then he walked over, shook my hand, and asked how I was doing. We made small talk for a few minutes. Before he left, he looked at me and said, "She's in therapy. She's working on herself. I hope one day she understands the good things she threw away." It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. It was closure, the real kind. The best revenge hasn't been watching her struggle. I take no joy in her unhappiness. The best revenge has been my own success and peace of mind. I'm thriving. My work is going well. My friendships are stronger than ever, and I'm genuinely happy. I've started dating again, casually. It's nice to meet new people without the weight of a shared future pressing down. A few weeks ago, my trivia team was at a bar, and I saw her. Chloe. She was with a group of people I didn't recognize. Our eyes met across the room. For a second, I saw a flash of the old Chloe, the one I fell in love with. Then it was gone, replaced by a look of deep, profound regret. She gave me a small, sad smile and then looked away. I didn't feel anger, I didn't feel pity. I felt nothing at all. And I knew in that moment that I had truly won. She wanted to find closure with her ex. Instead, she gave me closure from her. And for that, I am genuinely, finally grateful. Thank you all for listening. It's time to sign off and move on.